Monday morning musings for me was just an opportunity to engage and to reflect, to create some introspection and some perspective as we begin each week. And every week there's something different to discuss and something meaningful in our lives to share. And I invited a friend of mine, Bishop Robert McClory, to join, who is Bishop of Gary, Indiana. But he comes to Gary through Michigan because we were first introduced when he became Monsignor, when he was Monsignor at Shrine of the Little Flower, National Shrine here in Royal Oak, Michigan, which of course has a history in our community and in the Jewish community as well. And we started doing some work together. And as I mentioned on Facebook, the bishop reached out to me immediately after the attack on the synagogue in Pittsburgh. One of the first calls I got was expressing condolences, concern, and an awareness of the heightened anti-Semitism in our world. And I recognize the friendship and the genuine nature of that in someone connecting with me in that way. He was on the Bima at Temple Shir Shalom that next week alongside the Archbishop Vigneron and sharing on behalf of the Catholic community. And so for me, that really was a testament of what friendship is and what this represents. So welcome, Bishop, to Monday Morning Musings today.
It's a joy to be with you here today, Rabbi. And I must say, part of the Zoom experience is you see people's backgrounds, and you have a rabbi's bookshelf behind you. I can tell you are working hard and immersing yourself.
Yes, the home office has become a little more decked out these days, right? As we spend more and more time here. But look, it is the week of Christmas. And so I wanted to start just hearing from you spiritually what this time means. And I said before, listen, you're a man of faith, a Catholic man of faith. And I would like to hear, and I think it's important for us Jews to recognize what it means to you.
Well, obviously for us, it's a singular moment of joy because we celebrate the birth of Christ. And that event has encaptured in it so many beautiful themes. And I think Christmas in some ways is even, how would I put it, a more accessible one of our different feast days and holidays because it surrounds such clearly a joyful event. And that is the birth of someone who obviously we recognize as the fulfillment of the Messianic promises, but it comes at a time and in a way that really breaks forth light in a world that might be full of darkness. And so among the themes that we've been working on, certainly in my preaching here in Northwest Indiana, has been the light shines in the darkness. And it's so appropriate to this time of year. Of course, it's the time of year when on the one hand, the days become the shortest, but actually in a matter of hours, the days will become progressively, 1 minute longer every day. And in a world where there's so much darkness, as we hear in the scriptures, upon the people in gloom, a great light has shone. And so for us, it's an opportunity to really have a time of celebration. I think this year is a little bit unique. Sometimes we talk about the commercialization of certain, religious holidays and traditions. In some ways, that's an indication, I guess, of their popularity, so long as they're not co-opted. But sometimes the holidays and Christmas, it's a joyful occasion, but there can be a little bit of stress involved because you've got all the stuff to organize, you've got gifts to get, you've got gifts to wrap, and you've got people to host, and you've got all these, parties that you have to plan. And sometimes for Christians, like getting to Christmas can almost feel like you've ended the marathon and you're exhausted, because you've had to do all this stuff. Now, pray God the pandemic ends soon. But if we do want to see a little bit of light in here, it would be, for those who have been longing for something of a scaled back Christmas, candidly, this is your chance, to really, for them to, and for us to kind of focus even a little bit more on the meaning, focus a little bit more on the intimacy that occurs, and to really have a moment of light and brightness in a world that's had a lot of challenges over this past year.
Yeah, I appreciate that message. And I think many of us have found meaning in what we've been able to create in the intimacy of our immediate families. And, we've seen that at our synagogue where bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs sometimes can be, extravagant affairs, but now it's, 10, 12 people in the sanctuary, just the immediate family. And there's no party. It's just really honoring what that tradition is and a child's life in a sense too, and what they've accomplished. But there are things that, yeah, we do miss. I like the message of light, because I think it resonates with all of us. And coming out of Hanukkah, which just ended on Friday for us, same thing, right? That we need to bring light into our dark world, and that responsibility and how important that is too. Um, how has your ministry, adapted and changed in this time right now? And what will be, besides what you're preaching about and recognizing the COVID circumstances that we're in, how else will that be, impacting what you're doing?
Well, of course, we're trying to make sure that everything is accessible virtually, almost everything as much as we can. At the same time, of course, we are a communal people, and believers are. And so our churches are open, but, there are space limitations and social distancing and masking and hand sanitizers and all those kind of protocols. So we're still together, but it's a different, on the one hand, it's a different experience. On the other hand, it's still, our same Lord, and it's still the same expression of faith. I, of course, look forward to the day when all these communal celebrations are experienced. I do think culture is transmitted through community and through celebrations. And so, for some of our particularly ethnic groups, like Our Lady of Guadalupe is a big event within our Mexican American community here in Northwest Indiana and in the Detroit area. And so those celebrations became very restrained in a certain way. And it's, my concern is that the culture, which our faith is expressed, the Filipino community has another tradition of Zabang Gabi masses, which are coming together for 9 days in a row. So some of those traditions have been a little bit muted, and because we just don't have the communal gathering that would follow. So that's been a disappointment. On the other hand, I do need to acknowledge, particularly for the other abled, the disabled, there is a different kind of accessibility that we've been forced to give to them. And that's been a beautiful thing. Some people say I haven't been able to be in a Bible study in years, because for me to, kind of engage in all it takes to kind of physically get to the church and get back to the church, because I need assistance and I need helpers, and I have to figure out cars because I can't, I don't have means of transportation due to certain limitations. For some folks, it has opened up a pathway. And so I think, we're in the mode now of reflecting, what did we do out of necessity because just the circumstances required it? And what might be good to say, well, we learned that worked, and let's keep it going into the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the creativity we've been pushed to pursue, I think, has helped all of us. And we too have noticed, our attendance at services has never been this strong. Yeah. Although it's on Zoom, but our numbers are really remarkable for us, and the comments, connections we're getting from our people, and we recognize that that's something we want to continue while we're still in person as well, right?
Yeah, and I would say, kind of the charitable instinct that I think is pretty. I mean, of course, we want it to be across the board, but I think, as our elder brothers in the faith, I mean, certainly our Jewish brothers and sisters have led the way in this regard. But we as Christians, I think the charitable outreach has still been quite pronounced, meeting frontline needs of people who are still in need of food and who need assistance with shelter, and who are, in a difficult time. And even some of those have been modified a little bit, because we always try and capture a certain moment of encounter with those where you have an exchange or just give somebody something, but you kind of get to know them. So those have been modified somewhat, but I've been quite impressed with the level of just charitable outreach that has continued uninterrupted, and in fact has increased.
Mm-hmm. How busy is the Christmas worship season? Is it comparable to our high holidays? I mean, are you leading services from December 24th through the end of the 25th? I remember as a young boy, a midnight mass and the beauty around that.
Yeah.
And I was known to attend it on occasion just because of the cultural experience and the sanctity of it, and appreciating it too.
Yeah. So for us, Christmas is preceded by 4 weeks, Advent, which we anticipate. And a different way, we have our own traditions, and so I don't want to kind of co-opt or say they're the same thing, but that would be a lighting of a different candle each week, traditionally in an Advent wreath, with three purple candles and one a rose candle that would express joy. So there's really a period of about 4 weeks of preparation, which is supposed to be somewhat penitential for us, really an opportunity to prepare our hearts and minds for the celebration of Christmas. Traditionally, Christmas then, starts with masses on the 24th, and then that would extend, really our Christmas season extends to, in this instance, January 10th, which is the feast of the baptism of the Lord, the baptism of Jesus. And so really, one of my frustrations sometimes, just because the way the rest of the world encroaches, is that, again, we look at Christmas sometimes as the finish line, whereas really it should be, we've prepared for it, and then you can celebrate it really for 12 days or more, depending on the liturgical season. So we do have a number of different feast days that are embedded within there. So Christmas isn't really just the end, it's kind of the beginning of another season for us. And so it really is a beautiful time of celebration. With social distancing, normally the vigil, there's the midnight mass, which I just love, and I think it's a spectacular experience. Normally, the earliest time that we would gather to anticipate the next day would be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This year, and this was with much consultation, it's still the vigil, but it's a little bit earlier, at least not in the Detroit area, but in Indiana, we've moved that up to as early as 2 p.m., just to allow more spacing, time to clean the church in between gatherings and so on. But it is a busy season for us. One of the disappointments for me is typically the Bishop of Gary on Christmas Day would celebrate Mass at one of our state prisons here in Northwest Indiana. And, for them, they just are so hungry and grateful that in their need, they're not neglected. Sadly, this year COVID is preventing that. We just can't get in there. So my schedule will look a little bit different than traditionally it does for the Bishop of Gary, but that would be among those traditions. But certainly for our pastors, it is going to be a busy few days coming up at Christmas.
Yeah. What a humbling experience going into a prison like that. And I'm sorry you can't have that opportunity, and how important it is this year.
Yeah.
I had no idea that would be something someone of, the bishop would go attend and lead. It's really impressive. Yeah. Let's turn for a moment just to personal. You were appointed as bishop, I think it was late last fall, around Thanksgiving time, if I recall, when we got the word of that. And I think you started and left for Indiana in February. You're honored here in February. A month later, the world shuts down, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how has been transitioning into this major role, right? A really significant thing. Appointed, if I recall, by the Pope actually makes it a bishop's appointment to this. So that's really impressive. And he didn't call me and ask for, my approval. I was given it, just for the record. But
that's right.
Right. So what was that transition like? And then how much more so because of this reality of COVID?
Yeah, it was beautiful. You're right. It was just before Thanksgiving week. And then, the date on which I was ordained and installed as the bishop here was February 11th, which for Catholics has some significance. It's actually acknowledged as the World Day of the Sick. And we have a special devotion to the Mother of Jesus under the title of Our Lady of Lourdes, which is a great place of pilgrimage in France with many healings connected to that. So from the outset, and I look at this as God's hand in the midst of all this, there is a sense of that being ordained on that day, which is the World Day of the Sick. I felt that there would be some special, connection to that. And little did I know that, this great sickness, this malady would come upon the world with such intensity a month later. So the people have been very generous and very responsive, but it's been, obviously within the limitations that we have. But personally, I feel like, this is where I should be. Obviously, Pope Francis did appoint me here, and I've experienced great joy in the midst of this. And what I've been trying to do, Rabbi, is to, focus on what we can do and what I can do, and not on what I can't do. And I think for even, families, as you're dealing with someone who's, has some physical limitations or maybe is experiencing some decline as they age. I mean, I experienced this pastorally. There's some families who would lament what they're not able to do. Boy, we can't do this anymore, but they wouldn't savor what they could do. And so I'm trying to savor everything that I can do in the midst of this experience. And I have to say that I've really experienced spiritual renewal and refreshment during this time. So I will later Christmas Day make a little road trip to be with family for a couple days in Detroit, and then return back here to Northwest Indiana to keep serving the Catholic faithful here.
Nice, nice. Glad you get to come home for a little bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to also acknowledge the fact that last January 1st, and I think it was from Archbishop Vigneron, who said that all the churches should be recognizing the heightened anti-Semitism in our world. It was after there were some attacks in New York and New Jersey, I recall, during Hanukkah last year, which really motivated his kind and important words. And you talked about our relationship in your sermon and our friendship and Temple Shir Shalom, but also really the importance of recognizing anti-Semitism and what the Catholic community has to do to help fight that. And it just really means a lot to us, and the appreciation of your recognition of that.
It's essential. And I would say, that sermon that I gave, which I felt a particular obligation, given the legacy and the pain that has emanated from the shrine historically, it actually got a lot of national traction in the Catholic press. And then it linked people back to the time that I had with your congregation earlier that year. So we need to remain committed to that. And I know for your congregation, obviously in Detroit, and I lived and worked with Archbishop Vigneron as one of his chief assistants for many years. It is not lip service. He has a deep commitment that if he is aware of anti-Semitism, he wants to do his part to root that out. And that's a commitment that, obviously he didn't just pass it on to me, but it's what we need to do as Christians. But he has a passionate commitment to be vigilant to ensure that doesn't rear its ugly head. It sadly has in a number of instances, but he certainly is pretty tenacious about trying to do his part to oppose that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I will say that it means a lot coming from someone who, led Shrine of Little Flower and what that represents. And, I really looked forward to our connecting over that too. But
Yeah.
I know Father Joe, I had lunch with him and with Father Jeffrey Day right before the pandemic. And we were talking about the partnerships and what Temple Shir Shalom and Shrine can do and how we can learn together. And it's something that, part of legacy, in a sense, you started with me, that will continue on. And I want to see really happen for our peoples to learn. And I think this is why you being my teaching partner today, my guest, means so much, because it really represents the shared values we do have of bringing light into the world, even though we have different traditions, and the responsibility we have in doing that, and what that means for us as well. So I cannot thank you enough in the height of your busiest time right now, to take a few minutes to spend with us in the Jewish community. I hope those outside the Jewish community get to witness to hear this and watch this and engage with us too, because it really is something that I think people need to see more of, when friends can get together and respect one another in their uniqueness and in faith. And it means a lot.
Amen. Thanks so much, Rabbi. It's great to be with you this morning.
And we wish to you and to your people a Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year as well. And listen, safety and health for everyone, please, that we see a light at the end of this tunnel, and as we work forward on this too. So thank you so much.
Amen.